but I somehow just kind of lean into this space, this veil is almost like lifted, and I am able to communicate. And it really is just like a shift of my energy. Like I just shift myself over and there they are. What if I told you that you have extraordinary, one-of-a-kind gifts just waiting to be uncovered? I'm Claire Kellums, psychic medium, intuitive guide, and animal communicator, and I'm here to share my personal journey of spiritual growth and healing in the hope that my true lived experiences will ignite something inside you, empowering you to embrace your truest, most aligned self. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into all things spiritual development, manifestation, breaking generational cycles, aligning your life with limitless abundance, and so much more. I am beyond excited to go on this transformative journey with you and witness your growth as you expand into the person you were always destined to be. I wasn't put on this earth to play small, and neither were you. Are you ready? Let's get aligned. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I am so excited to finally be back with you all. On today's episode, we are actually going to dive into how I discovered I was a psychic medium. So let's just go ahead and get right to it. When I was a little girl, probably around 5 or 6 years old, I saw my first spirit. It was actually in my parents' bedroom. So at that time, I used to sleep in my parents' room, and I woke up one night because I just honestly felt the presence of someone there. And when I rolled over, I saw the silhouette of a man. He was probably 6'4", and he was a pretty solid build. And I remember it scared the crap out of me. I was terrified. So I rolled back over and just hoped and prayed it would go away. And this happened probably 5 or 6 times. I remember being very scared at the time, even though I knew it couldn't hurt me. However, it was still a lot for a young child to process, I guess. So one night, he honestly just went away. And from that point on, I have never seen spirit objectively again. However, after that night, everything turned more into knowingness for me. So when I connect mediumistically, I get information coming through as just like a thought, like a knowledge, and I just know the information. And I have no other better way to explain that than it'll just be in my head, and I know the information and I know the message that needs to be shared. So that's how it started to come through more so after that night. Now, throughout most of my life, I would say I didn't know I was a medium until much later on in my life. But I wasn't connecting mediumistically my entire life either, not to my knowledge. I might have had messages here and there, but mostly throughout my life, it was more of an intuitive, psychic-based experience. I can remember it was like the little things, I can remember I would know what the next episode of like the cartoon I was watching. I knew what was going to come on, or I knew it was getting ready to come on within the next few episodes. And then it went to, the phone would ring and I would be like, oh, that's my grandma. I would just somehow know what was happening. And that really was how the majority of my life went. Now, over time, and as I got into school and into junior high and high school, that intuitive nature really grew for me. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't know what it really was at all, but I knew just to trust it. And I'll be honest, there were a lot of times I didn't trust it, and it bit me in the butt. I am not kidding. I would get the biggest gut feelings. It would all but be like, Claire, come on. And I would ignore it. And sure enough, something would happen. And if I just listened to my gut, we all have that feeling, or we all have that, that experience, I'm sure, at least most of us do. But it really was that intuitive nature that I really honed in on and didn't even realize I was doing it. And so when I started to figure out who I really was, that's when I started really pursuing and really nurturing that intuition. Now, let's go back to the elementary school days, because this is where a lot happened for me. I was bullied pretty heavily in elementary school, honestly, throughout school. It wasn't always over one specific thing, but I found myself at the butt end of a lot of jokes that weren't really jokes, that they just really hurt my feelings. In elementary, I was just a little bit heavier than the other girls in my class. And I can remember it was 5th grade, and I can remember where I was standing on the playground, and one of the girls was having a sleepover, and I wasn't invited. And one of the other girls asked the girl who was having the sleepover why I wasn't invited. And I don't remember how it exactly happened, but the next thing I know, all of the girls in the class who were invited to this sleepover were like joining up in a little circle, and they were voting on whether or not I should be invited to the party. And keep in mind, I was literally just, I don't know, probably 20 yards away watching this all happen. I had to sit there and wait for their decision to know if I was allowed to go to the sleepover. So this is where the horses and the animals really come into play. I didn't obviously know at the time how to describe it, but I knew what I was feeling. I really didn't like school. School really brought out a lot of anxiety in me, especially from a young age. I did not want to leave home. And when I was at school, it was so overwhelming because there were so many emotions and so many feelings, and I could pick up on what someone was feeling, or what someone was, maybe what their intention was. And it was really hard. Again, I didn't know what I was doing, but that's what I was doing. And looking back, it makes me really sad for that little girl, because she literally just didn't understand what was happening. But I would pick up on a lot of things. And now I know that term is called an empath. And I was extremely, extremely empathic. And it was almost like the emotions that I would feel off someone would magnify like 100 times more in me. Someone could be feeling really sad that day, but to me, I was feeling like I just needed to cry hysterically, like it was the end of the world, like it was next level. And I really struggled with making friends and having friends, because it was honestly all just like too much, like what I was feeling all the time. I could pick up so many things. And like, for example, I could really pick up on intentions, and I could pick up on when someone was talking poorly about me or had recently been talking poorly about me. I could just walk up to them and I could just feel their intentions towards me that weren't pure or weren't kind. And it was really, really hurtful. And it was like, how do you explain that to someone? Like, I know you were talking about me, but I didn't see it and I didn't hear you do it, but I know you were, and it's so hurtful. How do you explain that to someone? And so I really struggled with this pretty well throughout my school years. And it wasn't until around 14, 15 years old that I started seeing a medium, and she was a family friend. I know, right? Like, we have a family friend that's a medium. Like, come on, it's awesome. But I started seeing her, and she started telling me, like, right from the get-go, she was like, you are really intuitive. Like, you are really empathic. Like, this is what you're experiencing. And she was like, you absolutely have these abilities. Like you have the ability to read people. And I was like, no, I do not. That's the craziest thing I've literally heard yet today. And I just did not believe it. I believed that I was an empath. I believed that I was an intuitive and, possibly psychic, but I did not think for 1 second I was a medium. I remember thinking, I don't have the abilities that she does. I can't do what she does. And how wrong was I? But at the time, I didn't know. So it wasn't until 2022 that I had like the grand spiritual awakening. Now, again, these journeys happen differently for everyone. And I can remember starting this journey and thinking to myself, why wasn't I born a medium and start giving readings like Tyler Henry at like 8 years old, whatever it may be. You find that you start comparing yourselves to others, and we all do it, and it's really hard not to do it, but try so hard not to do it because your path is beautiful and magical just the way it is. There is literally nothing more magical than the light that you give off, that very special uniqueness about you that makes you who you are. Don't ever forget that. So I had this big spiritual awakening in the summer of 2022, which is fitting because I was getting married that fall. And so at this time, I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want anyone to know because I have a few family members kind of talk ugly about mediums, and it was really hard to be able to trust anyone because I was so scared someone was going to be like, you're really weird or you're really crazy. And I have like that history of being bullied, and I just didn't want to be bullied again. So I didn't tell anyone. And I went through that entire experience just kind of by myself. And that was really hard because I had these crazy magical experiences happen and had no one to share it with because I didn't feel comfortable sharing with anyone. And so I started looking into podcasts because I just needed someone to tell me like what the hell was going on. I didn't know how to navigate anything. I didn't know if I should start reading people, but I didn't know how to read for people. So I was listening to a few podcasts and found a lady who was offering a course on developing mediumship. So I took the course, and in that course, I read for my first sitter, and it was magical. I can remember going into it, and I thought we were just going to like learn some stuff here and there. I didn't know we were actually going to read. I don't know, hindsight 2020, why wouldn't we? Because it was a mediumship development class. But I guess I just like didn't think about it. And so like I just didn't know. But anyway, she was like, all right, let's partner up. Let's read for each other. And I was like, hi, I literally don't know how to do this. And she was like, just say whatever comes to mind, whatever you feel, anything. I started, and immediately I was drawn to my right side, and all of a sudden I just felt this connection, and I just started talking, and I started describing this man who ended up being this lady's ex-husband, and I got through how he passed. I got through why he passed. I got through a lot of detailed information, and I was like, holy crap, how did I even just do this? And so I was really hooked from there. I was like, I got to do it more. I want to do more. And then the next girl I read for, again, like the stuff that I didn't have. This is how I can best describe how it happens and how quickly it comes in. I literally wouldn't have time to make it up. It comes in that fast. It comes in that strong. And I just know the information. It would take me so long to come up with the stuff like that they were showing me. Like I would never get there on my own, just like make this stuff up by chance. It comes through that fast. And I've really noticed for me, a lot of the time when the sitter would ask me a question, I would have the answer before they finished the question. And that's how I knew it was from spirit, is because it just came in so fast. And so I read it for this girl. It was, I got a lot of stuff through again, a lot of validating information. And there was one bit of information that she couldn't quite place. And I just felt really strongly about it. And she couldn't quite place it, but whatever, we finished the reading. She emails me 2 days later and she was like, you're not going to believe this. and then placed the information. She was like, I didn't know. And I went home and I asked my mom about this. And she was like, yeah, that literally happened. And I'm not going to share it on here because I don't have her permission to share it. So I don't want to, obviously share information that's not mine to share. But that was the coolest experience by far. Like at that time, I was like, oh my God, I'm actually doing this. How am I even doing this? I don't know. I'm just doing it. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. And so it was really after that, we got married the next month. And then I found out shortly after I was pregnant with my son, August. And how I came to find out that I was pregnant with him will forever be one of my favorite stories. And I am going to save it for another episode because it is pretty lengthy and it's one of my favorite stories. And it has, everything to do with signs and validations from the universe. So I'm going to leave you on a cliffhanger on that one because it is phenomenal. I love it. Now that I share with people what I do, I'm like, you have to hear this story about how I found out I was pregnant with my son. It is mind blowing. So I'll save it for another episode. But yeah, so after I found out I was pregnant with my son, I took a pretty long break the entire time I was pregnant with him. And then when he was about 8 to 9 months old, I got that call again and it came in so strong. I literally woke up one day and I was like, I'm going to start practicing reading for people again. It was so strong. I couldn't ignore it. And that happens, I think, to a lot of us. And we might not exactly know it, or we might not know what the calling is, but we have it and it's strong and it's like, hey, wake up, we're going to do this now. And it's hard to navigate when you don't know what the thing is that you're trying to navigate. So back to what I was talking about. I get sidetracked. I'm so sorry. I have ADHD and I literally am kind of all over the place, but I'm trying to reel myself back in here. So again, back to the summer of 2023. That's really when I started my actual pretty serious journey. And I've been on that journey now ever since. I started reading for people. I joined a community that I absolutely love. If you have heard of the Squamish Medium, she has a free online community. It's through her spirit school. She also has a collective, which is a paid monthly subscription that you can join, like a specific group of mediums, psychics, Reiki masters. I mean, there are anyone you can think of is there. It's pretty cool. But if you're not wanting to pay that right now, or you're not developing right now, and you want to just join her free community, it's honestly really, really amazing to be part of something that has so many like-minded people like yourself and like myself. Okay, so I will share a little bit with you now about how I read and how information comes through. I've kind of shared a little bit with you, but I will take you through a session with me essentially. So it's going to look different for everyone. It really depends on why the sitter is there and the messages that need to come through for the sitter's highest good. And I can't stress that enough. A lot of people will come to a reading because they want to hear from a certain person, or they want to know if they're going to move to Arizona or if they're going to buy a new car. And a lot of the time, sometimes those answers will come through, but the majority of the time, the messages that come through are some that you wouldn't expect to hear. And that is because they are for your highest good. Spirit is really good about bringing through information that you truly, whether you know it or not, need to hear in that moment. And that is something that I really do love about reading and about communicating, is that a lot of the times my sitter will be like, oh my gosh, I literally wasn't coming here for this today, and I can't believe you brought this up, but this just opens new doors for me, or it reminds me of something that I need to work on, or it opened something up for me that I wanted to forget about, but now I really want to heal this thing that happened. And it really is beautiful. I had a sitter who, I won't get too specific, but this person had some childhood trauma around her parents. And she came for an entirely different reason. But her parents came through, and I just felt this overwhelming sorrow. And I kind of started getting that knowingness that she had had some poor childhood experiences. And she, I shared what was coming through, and she thanked me, and she was like, I didn't even think about that, or I tried to forget it. And I really don't want it to be something that weighs me down anymore. So again, when I'm sitting in a reading, a lot of the time, all the information comes through me on my right side. So this is going to be maybe hard to explain over a podcast episode, but I'll do the best I can for like visualization purposes. So imagine, wherever you are, wherever you're sitting, imagine looking up to your right, kind of not straight up, but kind of just in the upper right-hand corner of wherever you are. That area is where grandparents come in for me. So that higher hierarchy level of like the grandparent level. And this is in relation to the sitter. And then to the right, directly below where the grandparents come in, that's where parents come in. Directly to my right, so if you were to stick your arm straight out to the right, that is where siblings, cousins, friends, and people of the same age as the sitter when they passed will come in directly to my right. Aunts and uncles will come in directly to my right, but just a couple inches back behind me. And then pets will come in more so on the ground to the right, but kind of directly behind me. And then spirit babies will come in directly, like right next to my face, like literally so close to my face. I can almost feel like they're just like touching me. And it's a beautiful rainbow of colors that are around them. And they are just like these glowing orbs of beautiful rainbow light. They're literally so beautiful. So that's kind of where everyone comes in for me. And this is all happening in my like energetic field. And so when I get information, I get it in a few different ways. So I have my claircognizance. That's that clear knowing. So I will just know the information, or it'll come through as thoughts that it's almost like I'm having the thoughts, but it's information that I literally couldn't have come up with on my own. So that is the strongest for me. Another one that I get is the clairsentience, which is a clear feeling. So that'll come through if I'm feeling very anxious, if the sitter was very anxious, or if the spirit had a more anxiety, more anxious tendencies, or I could feel sorrow or anger or immense love. And see, that's where that empathic feeling way back in childhood helped me out a little bit, because it's so magnified when I feel it. I recognize that now, and I don't let it take over as much. I know what it is now, and I'm better able to control it. So I will feel these really, really intense emotions. Sometimes I will actually physically feel things in my body. Sometimes, like if there was something with the throat, or if someone didn't speak a lot, or if anything kind of directly related to speaking or the throat of some nature, my throat will kind of close up and I'll start coughing. So it's things like that. Another one I use is clairaudience. And clairaudience is that clear hearing. I don't hear externally, I hear internally. So imagine if you're sitting here completely quiet and say your name in your head. You can hear it, but you don't hear it outside externally. It comes in internally, and it actually comes in at the center of my brain, if that makes any sense. If you're familiar with anatomy and you know where the pituitary gland is, that's honestly kind of where it comes in for me. And that's where I get all my information to. And so I will hear in the center of my head, and I will get the information into the center of my head I will also see, so that clairvoyance, I see clairvoyance in two different places. So I will see them, like I said earlier, up in the corners, like wherever they are in that hierarchy, but I will also see them in the center of my brain, or in the center of my head, but also kind of to the right side of my head. It's really hard to explain, I know, but I'm trying the best I can here. But I will see them almost like behind my eyes, if that makes sense. But that's kind of how it works for me. And it's really dependent on myself, spirit, and the sitter, which of the clairs I use that day. Sometimes I hear a lot of stuff. Sometimes I see a lot of stuff. Sometimes I'll get names. Sometimes I'll get dates. Sometimes they'll just flash images and signs really quickly. It really is just dependent on the sitter. Again, sitter, spirit, and myself that day. If I'm having an off day where I don't think I can feel a whole lot that day, or I'm just like overstimulated, whatever it is, and I'm just like, hey, spirit, like I can't feel, because the clairsentience, the clear feeling, it drains me very quickly out of the other clairs. So I use it as sparingly as possible, and I think spirit knows that too. So I don't use it a whole lot unless it's absolutely necessary, because, like, for example, I had a reading where the sitter's son came through, and all I could feel was the most like insane, intense love that I have ever genuinely felt in my entire life. And afterwards, I was on a high. It was euphoric. It was absolutely insane, that feeling that I felt. But then afterwards, after an hour or two had passed, I was so tired, I could hardly hold my head up. It really, really does drain me. So I used my other clairs a little more, and I think spirit knows that too, just because they don't drain me as quickly. So again, that's kind of how I operate. That's kind of how it works for me. When I do connect, so when I start connecting, there's no real, I guess there is kind of like an on and off switch. I don't know how I'm using it, but I somehow just kind of lean into this space, this like almost like this veil is almost like lifted, and I am able to communicate. And it really is just like a shift of my energy. Like I just shift myself over, and there they are. And that's the best way I know at this current moment in time. That is the best way I know how to explain that. I'm sure in the future at some point I might be able to explain that a little bit better and go into more depth about that. But that truly is how it works for me. Now, it works differently for everyone. It might work really similar for another medium, but another medium might only use clairvoyance or only use claircognizance. It's really specific medium to medium. And with that being said, I am going to go ahead and close out this episode for today. Again, thank you so much for being here and for listening to this podcast. I appreciate you all more than anything, because this is such a dream of mine. And I do have a fear of public speaking. And even though I'm literally staring at my computer right now, I know that I am speaking to someone. So it is really, really hard for me to speak and not freeze and not clam up and not freak out, because I struggle. I've always struggled with public speaking. It's not my strongest suit. So I wanted to do this podcast. It was a dream of mine to do it in the first place, but I really wanted to push myself and stretch myself and see how far I could go with it, because I wanted to be able to better communicate to you all and to feel more comfortable and more confident in myself. I have had visions, dreams that I am speaking in front of a lot of people, and it keeps coming and it keeps coming, and I keep having this repeat over and over and over, and I have had that for a couple years now. And so I know that I will be speaking to the masses one day, essentially. I just know that. And I want to be able to start practicing now, so I'm ready for that time when it does come. So again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for believing in me. And thank you, more importantly, for believing in yourself. And if you don't feel like you're quite there yet, you will absolutely get there. I believe in you so immensely. You are 100% going to be in that place. If I can sit here in front of this computer and make this podcast, I absolutely know without a doubt that you can do whatever you set your mind to, because you are here for a purpose. You are here for a reason. This life was not meant to go to work, to go home, to go to bed, to wake up, to go to work. You were meant for more. You were meant for more, and do not think for 1 minute that you weren't, because you absolutely were. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hop off here, guys. Again, have an amazing rest of your day wherever you are, and just stay well. All right, bye, friends. Did you love this episode of the Ultra Aligned podcast? If so, I would be so incredibly grateful if you could leave a glowing review and 5 stars. Your support helps this podcast reach even more people who are ready to step into their light. Have questions or suggestions for topics you'd like me to dive into? I'd love to hear from you. Just shoot me an email at theultraalignedpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for sharing. I love you all. I'll see you next time on the Ultra Aligned podcast.